Welcome to the Pestle, reviewing and breaking down movies to look for insights into the movie-making process. Hosted by nerds. Now let's dim the lights and start the show.
Welcome everybody to the Pestle. Today's show is brought to you by Hindle Women's Center. Don't call the midwife, let women have their fairy tale ending at Hindle Women's Center. Welcome everyone to the Pestle. I am Wes.
And I am Todd.
And we're filmmakers, actors. I've been a full-time writer-director for, a decade, give or take a couple years. Todd's been a full-time producer for like 50 years. Since before he was born, he was producing films.
In the
womb. And yeah, we take all that kind of knowledge and see what we can learn about filmmaking as we review and analyze movies from near and far. Like we certainly do a lot of American films. I think if you were to go through our catalog, we've done more than one or two science fiction films, but we try to go astray. I think in our heart, we're just science fiction guys, and we could probably make the next 20 episodes sci-fi films and not, be too upset about that. But we do try to mix in other films. We've done a lot of Korean films, some Hong Kong films, and yeah, a few, at least one Japanese film. We've done some anime, and probably have some more anime to come. And so we like to get a look around the world. Todd, don't you think? Do you like foreign films in general?
Yeah, I do. It's a different experience. You have to, the subtitle thing. You just have to go into it with the knowledge of I need to participate in this rather than, I can just stand by and let it come to me, which I think is a really good challenge in a world where everything is just kind of like given to you and consumable. I would say that I think it's important to in film specifically, think outside the box and watch things that aren't just easy to digest, where you have to participate in them. So, something like Parasite, is you've got to participate in that. It's all in Korean, so you have to read subtitles. You have to pay attention. If you miss a line, it's usually an important line that you shouldn't have missed it. You needed to pay attention. And so in this, what we're doing today, RRR, isn't completely like that, but most of it is subtitled, and so you have in many different languages. It was really hard for me to find the right language to subtitle it because there's so many languages in India, so many different languages that it was hard to find. So I think it's super important to not just watch films that are made in your language for you, and about your culture, if nothing, to expand your vision of the world, right? I mean, that's the whole point of traveling. That's the whole point of leaving home, is to experience the vastness and largeness of the world and the people and the cultures in it. And I think film is just one aspect of that. Of course, that's super important.
Yeah, completely agree. I mean, for me, like, this is one of the greatest things about storytelling, is the way it can expose you to other ideas, other cultures. For me as a young boy growing up on a farm in nowhere, Texas, and milking my own cows every morning for, no, that's not true.
I was like, what?
but it was like, film was my way to know more about the world. And I can't imagine what my life would have been like without movies. And just the ability to see, this is what people in my own country are experiencing in different parts, right? New York or whatever, Chicago, LA. These are all really unique and specific cultures with stories of their own to tell. And so, I completely agree. Just the level of engagement that it requires to watch a foreign film is important. Just because also, like everything that you said, and plus, I think it also pulls you deeper into the story because you can't look away. And so if you are participating then you're like all the way in, because you can't blink, you can't check your phone, because you might miss dialogue. You might miss, and once the dialogue is up, it's going to go away really quick. And so you kind of got to keep glued in and just really focus. And I think that pays off on average with a much more enriching, experience for the viewer. Yeah, all those things, man. I love that. Yeah. And so with that in mind, what are we doing today?
Today we are covering the Indian blockbuster RRR. So if you haven't seen this film, please pause this episode, go watch it, because we're going to spoil a lot of stuff. It's streaming on Netflix.
Yeah, we'll look at a bunch of things. We'll look at some of the cinematography, the frame rate. We'll also dive a little into story and writing. We'll talk about musical storytelling, heightened tone, and other such stuff and things and stuff.
And a quick synopsis of the film. By the way, if I destroy these names, apologies. I'm
White
doing my
man
best with what I was given. Right. A fictitious story about two legendary revolutionaries and their journey away from home before they started fighting for their country in the 1920s. It's directed by S.S. Rajamouli. Screenplay by S.S. Rajamouli. Cinematography by K.K. Senthil Kumar. It's featuring N.T. Rama Rao Jr. as Bheem, Charan as Rama Raju, Alia Bhatt as Sita, Twinkle Sharma as Malli, Ray Stevenson as Scott Buxton, and Olivia Morris as Jennifer. Nailed it.
I couldn't find a good clip to play, as you pointed out. There's about 3 or 4 different languages that this movie takes place with. And the one clip that I thought, okay, this will play well for the purposes of this movie and that it's in English, for our audience, was at the very beginning whenever the guy pulls out the gun to shoot the mother, and his captain, Scott Buxton, stops him hey, let me tell you about the bullet, and he gives this whole breakdown
That's
of
great.
the bullet. That's a great scene. And yet I couldn't find that clip, anywhere online to play back. And so, yeah, just imagine in your heads that's what we heard. Yeah. Nice. So I don't know. The first time watching it, and I'm curious, did you go back and rewatch it for this viewing, or was it so strong that you were able to kind of live off that first viewing?
Yeah, I rewatched it, but I could have not, because it sticks with you. I think there are a few things that I can call out. Well, first off, it's an incredible film. I absolutely loved it, and it was so interesting because our buddy Scott, who's been on the podcast, he's mentioned it a couple of times to us, and oh man, you've got to go watch this. I can't even describe to you what it is. It's just just go watch it, which we always appreciate. Somebody not trying to destroy a film by describing it in their stupid words, including us, by the way.
Yes.
But we already did our spoiler alert, so this is your fault for listening. So, I mean, first off, as an American, when you think Bollywood, you're thinking just dancing all the time and music, and so I was very apprehensive going into it because I don't like musicals in general, but I just thought, you know what, it's getting rave reviews. I saw on the Oscars they did a dance on the Oscars, and it was really amazing. And I was like, oh man, I'll go check it out. So that was the first time I watched it. A couple days after that, and a couple of things I will say. The VFX are just so fun and so amazing. I mean, I think I want to say there's over 1,000 VFX shots in the film that just all over the place. And some things that you think could have been, staged or real or whatever. I mean, they're obviously VFX stuff, but one of the ones in specific that I just gush over was when the two guys first meet on the bridge with the train that explodes.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, first off, obviously it's all, like fake, whatever, but it's just done so well. And the physics of it feels right. An explosion knocks one of the train cars off the track and it's dangling like that. And it's dangling that feels like it physically could happen, right? And if it were to explode, would possibly happen. But everything that ensues is so grandiose and like ridiculous that you just let go and you just experience the way the story in however they wanted to tell it. The whole, when they see each other from the bridge to the shoreline, they nod at each other like, let's do this. We're going to save this kid. And then everything that ensues from the horse and their motorcycle to them wrapping around each other. You don't know what's happening, but they do, because they're heroes and they speak the hero language. And the whole swinging over and the setup of, oh, he's grabbing this flag. Why is he grabbing this flag? We don't know yet. As he's riding the horse, we don't know yet, but he's grabbing the flag, and it just happened. You know, it's the Indian flag, and which is just, imagine being from that country.
Yeah.
How amazing does this scene end up, right? Oh, he's grabbing the flag, and then they jump off the sides of the bridge. They come together, and he wraps the other guy in the flag, which protects him from the fire. It's just so over the top and unbelievable, yet so, you know, I was like cheering, you know, when that happened. Like, oh my, I'm not even Indian, and I'm just like, this is a beautiful thing. So anyway, so I will say that the VFX are incredible. I loved all of it. I loved even the animals, you know, because they're very big on, especially over there on not injuring animals. Animals are very important, and so they don't use any real animals in this. So it's all, you know, whatever. So, and it's very hard to make a believable tiger. You know, imagine that. Imagine you have to make anything seem real, let alone a tiger with hair, you know, hundreds of thousands of pieces of hair. You know, anytime it roars, you know, all the muscles that have to happen, you know, the way that it looks right next to a human being, a real human being's face, you know, at the beginning when the tiger goes after him and he's trying to hold the tiger back. Oh, what a scene. And his reactions to the tiger clawing him and how he has to, you know, endure that. I was kind of blown away. I mean, I obviously know that it's not real. It's not a real tiger, but I was blown away by how good it looked. The character establishment, the way they establish both of our of our heroes, Bheem and Raju. I mean, imagine the scene at the beginning or towards the beginning. Which one was it? The bad guy.
Rama. Yeah. With the, are you talking about the
Rama
with the little the fenced in area and the barracks?
Yes. Yeah. You have 100 extras and you have a wide shot and you can still pick him out. Like, think about the thought that has to go into that. The cinema, you know, yes, the cinematography, but like the direction thought of, let's give everyone hats, have everyone have muted colors, and then let's give him one thing that makes him pop out. He doesn't have a hat, right? Like things like that. It's really amazing how in a group of 100 people, you can pick him out every single moment, you know? And that whole fight scene is just over the top, crazy, unbelievable, but it establishes Rama as, you do not mess with him. He will always win. Always. And Bheem is obviously established as like a really strong, you know, the opposite, you know, he's internally very strong, right? He can, anyway, they established characters really well. I thought that was incredible. I mentioned the bridge scene. I mean, some things are totally ridiculous, but they also make me think of Everything Everywhere All at Once, like the shoulder fight scene at the end where he's on his shoulders and, you know, controlling it. Like, totally ridiculous and over the top, but why not? I mean, you've got half the stuff that's happened up until this point. You know, it just feels like that felt a little ridiculous, but it was just fun at that time. And then the last thing I'll say before I'll you know, we can get into the details, and I'm really interested to hear what you think, was the dance scene was probably the best dance scene ever on film. I mean,
At the party.
At the party.
Yeah.
Yeah. The dance scene.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
Right.
come on. The music was so good and all the movements were so good and they were hard movements and aggressive and pointed and it also told a story too of friendship.
Hmm.
Because Rama is not the kind of guy to lose. We've already established that multiple times, and he lets Bheem win because they're friends, and he's building up his friend in the eyes of the girl that he's in love with. It's just they use that to further the story, and I love that. I mean, that's the point of. What else is the point of doing a dance or a song or something other than to further, the story? And they do that as well. It's so fun. Go into it with the idea with being ready to watch a 4-hour movie. I will say, because I was, the first time I watched it, I had no idea how long it was. I was like an hour and a half in. I was like, how much longer is it? Oh my God. 2 hours long, much longer, 2:15. It's crazy. But if you go into it knowing it's going to be a journey and you're not going to know what's going to happen next and just be okay with it, let go. It's a wonderful experience.
Nice.
Yeah. So what did you think?
I was probably a little less enthusiastic about it. I'm more mixed. Like all the heightened stuff really does not work for me in this kind of story. And in general, I'm probably not a big fan of overly heightened action films. And then combining that this is a historical film in a sense. Now, this story did not happen. These characters are real, and then it would be like us making a movie about Lincoln and FDR, right? and having them become a buddy bromance, story. That could be really awesome, but obviously really has little grounding in reality. Now, I do suspect there's a ton of symbolism, like you already pointed out, the flag at the beginning, wrapping around and creating, there's tons of symbolism. I'm sure Malli is representative maybe of like the heart of India, and other kind of things like that. I'm sure stuff like that actually happened. Don't get me wrong. But in the context of these two particular revolutionaries and all of this happening, I don't know what that line is between reality and fiction, but I think watching this kind of story unfold in this kind of way was just hair raising for me. Cause I'm like, I don't know what's happening. And I think coming in, I was really hoping that I would just, buy in 100% the entire way because of how excited, Scott was, and then you as well. And I've seen some Bollywood films, and I know, and this was the first thing Scott pointed out, was like, this isn't actually Bollywood, this is Tollywood, which is a different section of India. So I was expecting like this dramatically different thing. I'm sorry, for me as a Westerner and like a, more traditional film appreciator, I don't see the difference between Bollywood and Tollywood. It's not as apparent and obvious to me. And I've seen some other, Indian films like Bahubali is like a really big, legendary Indian film. And this is very much in that vein to me. I don't see that big of a difference. That's not to say I wasn't pulled in. And this is why I'm saying I'm mixed, because there's so many moments where I start getting pulled in. I thought that opening was perfect. Like it was so good to have this misunderstanding, right? And the girl being kidnapped and the mother standing up. And the second we see that log get smashed on her skull, like my heart stopped. Like I was fully engaged at that point. And it was just this really, I don't know. For me, I guess this has all the trappings of a musical without really being fully a musical. And by the trappings, I just mean like musicals traditionally are very declarative, and their intentions, their feelings, right? They announce everything. They don't leave anything to your imagination. Musicals are all about singing what you feel. If you, instead of like building up a sequence of, I love this girl, the guy just says, I love this girl, right? It's not about discovery. It's about, just pure revelation constantly. And this is all that is. This whole movie, like there's very, very little hiding underneath the surface in terms of plot and story development. Like, and in case you ever miss any, you know, conceptual element, they're going to make sure it's announced either through a song, right? You have the music is constantly explaining everything, and as well as trying to create the tension itself. I mean, even one of the first lyrics, after they meet, right? The bridge scene happens, and then we have this nice montage song sequence that kind of builds them up, and their relationship and what they're doing. And the song constantly reiterates, right? It's yet to be seen if this will end in bloodshed. Like, just in case you're not clear on the stakes here, we're gonna ask the question. And so, and that's what I mean. Like, this has all the makings of a musical, and it certainly goes to musical places, but this isn't by any stretch like a traditional musical, in that every, you know, 4 or 5 minutes there's a music number. Because also the typical way a musical unfolds is we're going to tighten the runtime through laying out plot, through music. And so, instead of like having this girl get kidnapped, that might be a musical number. And now it's like we got both the music, you know, and dance number, as well as layering in like the plot elements that are going to drive the actual story. And here they do almost the exact opposite. They'll do the plot thing, and then we'll just have this complete aside that's a big musical number for its own sake, to kind of help develop your feelings and emotions toward these characters, the emotional buy-in of what's going to happen. And so that's why I say it's like, it's all the trappings of a musical without any of the efficiency that musicals bring you, because it is a 3-hour film. And I think that is one of the things I hold against this movie is like, I think there's a way. I don't think you could cut out an hour. They are telling a lot of story. It's not like they're being completely wasteful with the runtime. So I don't think you could get this down to 2. I honestly don't. But I think you could probably get it somewhere around 220 to 230 through a little tightening of scenes here and there. And it's not like I would cut this scene out. I don't think I have that moment in here where I'm like, this, you can do away with this backstory of Ram and his father. You cannot. You can't. You need that. It's important. You can't cut out him and Sita. You can't cut out any of these real moments. Even the introduction, like the closest thing I could get to cutting anything out would be Bheem's opening, his introduction, just because plot-wise, it doesn't really pay off anything. But you need it to understand Bheem. Like you just need it as a character development piece. So there's nothing that I can look at and say, aha, you wasteful, arrogant, Indians. I can't do that. But I think there's just tightening that you could do along the way. That's like, okay, we can trim off, 2 minutes off this scene and 30 seconds here. And it just eventually culminates into 30, 40 minutes of runtime that, you end up doing away with. And so, yeah, runtime, I definitely, I was probably 40, 45 minutes in. I started checking the runtime. I was like, oh man, where are we at? I was like, okay, like gird yourself. But I will say my second time through, because I watched it this morning, much easier. Like I enjoyed it a lot more, I think, my second time through, because I got to stop wondering about where this is going. And it can really start to enter in and appreciate these sequences more. Because I struggled a little bit every time everything started going to the extreme areas. I was just like, okay, we're doing that. That's fine. The first time, I will say, watching the introduction of Ram, I was like, oh, this is interesting. This is cool. This is visually exciting. I was good with it. Like, I think there's just this weird line that's a personal line. I'm not like trying to hold up RRR to be my movie. But there is this personal line that they just cross with the heightening tone that I'm like, I can't go there with you. I just can't. And sometimes it's where the silliness kicks in. So like towards the end, they have that car sequence, right? Where the Bheem is trying to free, or gosh, maybe it's Ram, is escorting all of this cargo, right? And he's trying to get the guns, and Bheem is trying to rescue Malli. And so all these things are kind of coming loggerheads, and you have these like car sequences, the car crash, and you can see them speed ramping. And I felt like, I don't know if this was a style choice or if they couldn't quite find a way to shoot the way they wanted, or if it was just, we need to squeeze down runtime somewhere, because maybe the way that he really wants us, it's like a 3.5 hour film. And he's like, I got to make concessions. And so we're going to tighten this and we're going to speed up this car wreck. And so there's this kind of silly sequences. Same thing with the tiger sequence during the Bheem's trying to free Malli at the party, at the palace or whatever. And they kind of speed ramp here and there. And I'm like, that doesn't play. And so that, and then of course the big heightened over the top stuff. I really couldn't go there at the end, like with the
shoulder fight.
Yeah, with the chicken fighting like sequence. That's what we call it in America, right? Where you chicken fight and like you're in a pool or at the lake and one buddy gets on top of another guy's shoulders and it's all about trying to knock someone else down. Yeah, that did not work for me. I was fully ejected at that point. I was like, but what's crazy is they'll have these sequences that I am buying into, and I think it's intentional. I'm not saying that it's not, where they'll build out these really good like fighting sequences, and then they jump into this other world, Crouching Tiger kind of poetic, fighting. And it's interesting, but it's the mixture just really doesn't pan off for me, because like at the party sequence, or I don't know what you want to call that, the breakout sequence with the tigers and the animals, Ram and this is Bheem's and Ram's first big fight, right? When they kind of reveal themselves, who they truly are to each other, and they're at the palace, and their whole fight sequence kind of begins with this really good hand-to-hand fighting. It's almost Brazilian jiu-jitsu ground game, right? Where they're constantly flipping each other over, getting into arm bars, choking each other, slamming, like, oh, you got my arm bar, but I'm going to pick your whole body up and slam you on the ground. Like, it's freaking beautiful. And then they immediately break out of that and go into like, we're pulling posts out of the ground and like swinging it. And I'm going to throw you across the courtyard. And instead of, landing somewhere, instead of landing, I'm going to jump off a lamppost and, getting to a fighting position. And it was just, I would like to pick one, I think. And so those are the kind of like stylings that I'm like, okay, I get it. And this is, it seems very, from my limited experience, it seems very cultural. Like this is a cultural flair that's embedded into a lot of Indian cinema. Because I have seen some. I'm not coming out of complete ignorance, but I'm not super literate either. Like I've seen less than a dozen, let's say, Indian films of this, styling. And every time I'm just like, it doesn't really work for me. But the frustrating part is when I'm buying in so well to some of these other moments, whether it's, Bheem, getting whipped and he starts singing his heart song, and gets the people riled up and, all this stuff is happening. I struggled with it. I'm very ambivalent because there's moments that I really enjoy. The bridge scene is fantastical and it does work really, really well. I would just like a little bit more underneath the hood than painted on top of it, with I don't know, gold and origami, like just flying around. Like, just let me have something under the hood to emotionally engage with, because throughout the first 30-40 minutes, we kind of keep cutting to the titles, and it's kind of doing this chapter layout. And that opening sequence with the girl, with Malli being kidnapped, was so good. And then we kind of cut back to the title of, that was the story. Now we're entering the water, and now we're entering, the fire or what have you. And it was just, it's such a strong choice. And I respect that on the one hand. On the other hand, it also, for me, comes across as insecure in your storytelling. that I don't trust my audience to understand what's happening, I'm going to constantly announce everything as it's happening. And that's the kind of stuff that it's hard for me to go there. Whether or not it's cultural, it doesn't really matter to me. As a film, fan, I'm looking at it as a storytelling choice that I'm like, okay, I was trying to emotionally engage, and now you're not allowing me to, because you don't give me the space to emotionally engage through participating in the film. That's the overview. I do want to come back though to the party dance sequence, because that is so good. That whole sequence is great because it starts with the kind of meet cute Ram trying to help his buddy Bheem, who is this brave warrior kind of guy who suddenly can't talk to the girl. That's that's so good, because it also starts playing into the bromance element, because before the party, he talks him into going to the party, right? And then they do this thing that you hardly ever see men do in movies, which is they play dress up for the party, right? He's like, no, this is what you need to do. And he's like, dressing him, and he's giving him a makeover, right? And it's this really fun kind of cute moment between two very masculine men. That's really damn cool. I wish we'd see more movies kind of take this approach of, I don't know, just being secure as a man.
Yeah.
Like, we're one step away from watching them hold hands. And I think that would have played fine. Like, there are cultures that have men walking around in public holding hands, and it's not weird. It's cool. It's my buddy. Why not? Yeah. And then there is this one kind of hilarious moment that I think American audiences would be like, oh, wow, that's a decision, which is right before the big dance off happens, right? There's this dramatic thing happening between Bheem and the Englishman, who's mocking him, and he's doing swing. I like the Englishman starts doing swing. And then we kind of cut to the brother on the drums. Like, why they got the brother on the drums?
I knew you'd notice that.
And then Ram comes over with the lid. I don't remember what it was, like the serving plate lid. And the brother like throws him the drumsticks. And the guy Ram starts playing on the server lid, the tray, and we watch the guy, the drummer, like go with it, and he's like really excited about it. It's just such a funny, like, American audiences are dying over that. I guarantee it, because it's so hilarious. But I think it's like good natured. I don't take it as anything like out of pocket, but it's definitely writing a line for a lot of American audiences. And it's fun. Like, that's a whole, man, when they get going, watching that entire 50, I don't even know, it felt like 1,000 people in the middle of that party, just going. That's so well edited. The choreography is masterful, because I think it's hard, and I don't dance. Like, you don't want to put me in any of these sequences. Wes will ruin your day. but I've seen, I've worked with, dancers and choreographed, let them choreograph and try to capture their amazing choreography. And it's such a tricky thing as a filmmaker to try to capture a dance sequence with multiple people, because you have to pick the right type of dancing that plays with a bunch of people all at once. The things you can do with one person aren't exactly the same things you can do with 50. And to make all that pop and come alive on camera, you have to winnow away, certain types of movements, certain types of things that work in profile versus over the top, and your angle. You have to work all these things in conjunction with your choreographer and your cinematographer, and your set deck, to all come together. And they just did it, and they crush it. I can see why, if that's the dance I didn't watch the Oscars, but if I were watching it and they played that dance sequence, I can imagine having the exact same reaction, where I'm like, yeah, I got to see what that's about, because that was unbelievable. And that dance sequence definitely pulled me all the way in. I was there because it's so beautiful. I think the first time through, I was slightly removed, just trying to think about, okay, they have, the Englishman. What is this? And I think I got too layered into what does this represent kind of stuff instead of like, it's simple. It's don't think too deeply about it. It's very, very simple. The Englishmen are coming onto their territory and they're getting their ass handed to them. That's it. That's all there is. The symbolism is right there on the surface. And that's fine because it's beautiful and it works. And then to your point about like Ram taking a dive for his buddy, love it. Just good. And it's shot well, right? You see that is one thing they don't explain. I want to make sure I call that out because I just, punched them again and again over not giving us those kind of moments. And this is that moment. This is a moment they never explain. They literally have him look over to see Jennifer watching and hoping. He looks at Bheem. And then he falls, right? Like they let that be a mental story that we tell ourselves, and they never explain that at any point in the film. That's never explained. And so they do know how to do that. Is also my point. Like it's clear the storytelling is capable. I think that's also part of my frustration of not allowing more of those moments to just kind of sit with the audience, because how much more powerful was that for us to see Rama, take one for the team. And never, he doesn't point it out to his buddy. He doesn't go back and say, "Are you glad I took a dive?" Like, no. What a shitty thing a friend would do to point out to your friend that I let you beat me. Like, maybe he would have beat you if you would have done it in a fair fight anyway. Now, after the scene, he's literally carrying Bheem home. And so you probably wouldn't have. But if you're going to let your friend have it, let your friend have it, man. Don't point out to him that I let you win. Yeah. Yeah. That's a beautiful, beautiful moment. I don't know. By all means.
No, I mean, I totally get everything you're saying. I think that's the difference between, and this is why it's fun to do these kinds of things. Yeah. I think that's the difference between like how you and I like watch movies sometimes is like, you watch it very much from an analytical perspective. And I guess I do too, but you also watch it for fun. So, but you're weighted more towards how are they doing this and why, and I can just turn my brain off very easily. I don't know if that's a good or bad thing. And just like not always, that's the other weird thing is that not all of this film like hit for me, like there were several parts that were like, just, I don't know, it felt very long, and tedious. And I was thinking, oh man, they could have cut. Where could they have cut? I don't know. But if I was making this movie, I would find some places to cut. Like this is really long. But yes, it was an easier watch the second time, for sure, because I knew what I was getting myself into. But I don't know. I just reserved myself to be okay with whatever happened from the very beginning. It is literally impossible for a human being to fight 100 other people and win. That would not happen, right? Yeah. And so from the very beginning of that, but it was so cool to watch. And so I knew at the beginning, I thought, okay, this is what I'm in for. Now it did get crazier, the shoulder fight thing. And I just keep coming back to that because I think that is the one thing where like I really had to turn it off. At that point I thought, man, it's one thing holding a tiger back, right? And it's and like fighting off 100 people. It's another thing doing flips while someone's on your back, and you're beating everybody. Like, it's just not a thing. So,
it's a fine line, right? To find where to stop heightening and to let something just kind of live with a little more reality. And I don't know that I could find that line. But yeah, there are just certain moments where I think if they'd kept everything, I think two things would have made me love this film. One of them is getting the runtime down 30, 40 minutes, probably speeds the story along a bit more. And Then the other thing is probably just finding ways to reduce some of the wilder moments. Like, it's funny because I could handle the bridge scene, right? And that's way over the top. But I couldn't handle like the shoulder fight. Like, I don't know why that's a West thing. That's not, I'm not blaming anyone. I'm saying this is my fault and I don't know why.
Yeah. No, I get it. I totally get it. I don't think that that's a fault either. I think also, they were trying to, obviously make these guys, they're godlike in a way,
Yeah.
They're different from you or I, as opposed to just, like in Star Wars, the stormtroopers are just very bad shots, right? But they're not, like Han Solo wasn't a god, you know what I mean? He just didn't get hit. Like, this is different. This is, you could hit me, but that ain't going to stop me, and I might be injured or whatever, but there's no stopping me. I'm not gonna ever lose no matter what. And so they took that to an extreme, and I think, for some audiences that's okay. And then for others who are looking for more substance, maybe it's not. And I totally am fine either way.
That's a really good point, because for the most part, they don't allow those kind of abilities for any other character. It's not like, other henchmen are running around grabbing cars or flinging tigers at their enemy, right? It's almost exclusively limited to these two guys, Bheem and Ram. And that plays right into exactly what you're talking about. These aren't normal people. They're making sure you understand these are like godlike kind of men, with the exception, I think, of Scott Buxton, the kind of evil villain guy. And this was another one of those moments that just pulled me right back out, where his car gets crushed by the tree and it flings him up into the air, and he kind of just freezes midair and grabs his gun and takes aim and shoots. I forget who he shoots or what he shoots. He shoots Ram's car, and that flings Ram out. And that's where they do this little speed ramp spin of the car, and Ram gets flung into a tree and like gets stabbed by a root, or a branch, a broken branch. And that was another one of those like, y'all are just doing too much. And I think those are the kind of moments where I'm like, yeah, that's it. You could say it's playing into, because now you basically have to say that, Buxton himself is also the kind of this godlike character, which I guess if you're going to have a villain, you should put him on the same plane as your heroes, right? To make it a challenge. But the one nice thing about heightening, having a heightened tone, is that it does help sell some of these smaller, unrealistic beats. Like when Bheem is locked up and he's thrown into the car, and Ram's trying to find a way to get him this razor blade. And so this guy puts the razor blade in the truck's, edges or whatever, the gaps in the truck, and the truck, hits a bump, and the razor blade falls into Bheem's, hands. And it just becomes like, you know what? In the context of everything else happening, yeah, I can buy into that. It's a lot easier to imagine that, this kind of random, crazy, like aim of someone you can't see capturing this one little tiny thing. Yeah, fine. I'll go with that, because, 10 seconds ago, I watched him punch out a tiger. And so why not? But that is useful, as a storytelling tactic to, like, there's so many other things you can get away with because so much else is like really, really big and over the top. That's totally plays up fine for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing that you mentioned, like, great introductions for sure. The other little touch that I would add on to the points that you were making is that Ram, yes, establishes him as an absolute force, but even against his own people, And that's the other kind of little touch that they're putting on there is he is a force for the English. And so that, makes his revelation later in the film, that much richer, that, oh, actually, that's what he's willing to do for his people. And it just adds a really good punch and context. But at the outset, you're like, oh man, no one can stand up to him, not even his own people. That's a really strong moment because you assume all the worst qualities onto him after watching him do this. Like, why are you doing this to your fellow countrymen? And yet it's for a reason. Yeah. I think, hold. Oh, my only other little tiny note, and this is, it's amusing to me, I appreciate it, is that all the white people are hilariously evil or hilariously weak and scared. Fair enough.
Not?
Hey, why not? Yeah, do it. Go all the way. With the exception of Jennifer. She's like this heart of gold, can do no wrong. And I think that's even believable, to me. Even in American history, you could go back and look at, our darkest days of slavery. There were white abolitionists who were incredibly savage in their approach to, seeing abolition take hold. Go Google some of those sons of bitches. Like I think it's Todd Brown. Like you'll find some really, really wild stories of abolition. And so it's not hard for me to believe Jennifer being this lone, white person being a good person. But I find it really hilarious. Just how, absolutely, even the soldier at the beginning leans over to his officer and he's like, that man terrifies me or something. Like, it's so good. Like, yeah, it's just, everyone's kind of shaking in their boots or, absolutely crazy evil, which, what, probably seeing some of the stuff that, a lot of people did back then, that par for the freaking course, man. Colonialism is no joke. I don't know. Do you have a favorite moment?
It was definitely, for me, the fight scene at the beginning. I just thought that was so amazing. Just because, at that point, I don't know who the main characters are. I mean, these guys might be famous in their country, but I don't know any faces that I don't recognize anybody. So I have no idea what's happening, who's important, who's not. Even this guy, like seeing him the first time, seeing what he's doing, I don't know necessarily that he's the main dude. Like I have no idea what's happening. And just the way that they shot that I always had focus on who exactly I was looking at or I was looking for. It wasn't like a Where's Waldo scenario. And I just loved that. I thought it was just beautifully planned out. That was that for me. And then I did love the shot, the other specific shot that I loved of towards the end where what's in it? Bheem drives all the animals into the palace, and then they all jump out together, and he jumps out. Like, come on, that's a like Michael Bay couldn't do that any better. You know what I mean? Like that was like an amazing slow-mo shot of him like flying out, with the animals and the tigers around him and stuff. And I did like that they weren't safe from the animals either. Right. He wasn't safe from the animals either. The animals were still going to go after him as well. And he had to fight them off as well, or throw the tiger into somebody or something ridiculous. You know what I mean? So that I loved that shot too. Yeah.
That's really good. The other thing I guess I forgot to mention was some of the cinematography is gorgeous, to your point. Like it's great. Like I loved all the lighting, everything looked really beautiful. They clearly took their time. There weren't rushing through production. And they killed it. It was interesting too, the mix of frame rates throughout the film. They clearly found some sequences, and my guess is because a lot of it's choppy. There's a lot of choppiness to a lot of the film, and that choppiness can come one of two ways. Either one, you kind of lower the shutter angle so that, each frame is a lot sharper and you reduce your motion blur. The other way is to just have a higher frame rate. And the effect is very similar. And the difference though is in post, you can now, I want to slow this moment down. You have a lot more options in post to slow things down. And so it was an interesting stylistic choice to not just pick, we're only going to do these moments in slow motion ahead of time. To me, it came across as we're going to shoot more at a high frame rate just in case we want to slow something down in post and like really emphasize this moment. It just gives us more options to tell our story instead of determining everything ahead of time. Like these are the only moments we're going to go slow. Instead, it's like, oh, you know what? This sequence, we know this is a big dramatic sequence. We're going to shoot this whole thing at a higher frame rate. That way, if we need to buy time or if we want to, enhance this moment a little bit, or more simply, if we just want the look to stay consistent, because maybe we want this sequence in slow motion, but maybe we don't. I've seen that in other films, like big blockbuster films where, we're going to shoot this at a high frame rate. You know what? We're actually not going to slow anything down. We're just going to play it back, and it's just going to look choppy because it's just going to look choppy. We just didn't want to slow it down. And so I suspect certain moments they obviously knew they wanted in slow-mo, but I felt like they could have switched back to a normal frame rate and chose not to for probably style reasons. But I think I wouldn't be surprised, I'll say, if they also did that just as an in case. Like, you know what? Just in case, we can make our day a lot easier instead of shooting this twice, because that's effectively what you would have to do. Is I don't know if I want this in slow-mo, but I might. Okay, we'll shoot it at 24 and we'll shoot it at 48 or 60 or 120. And instead of doing that, let's just shoot it all like 60 or 120. And then in post, if we want to slow it down, we can. And if not, it's fine. It looks really exciting and it puts an edge on the scene, so that you almost don't know what to expect. It heightens everything, and this whole movie is heightened anyway. Why not? It's not hurting anything, and it can only give you more options later on down the line. That's a really interesting approach to the film, assuming that's what they were going for. And obviously, I don't know. To everyone's surprise, I did not work on RRR.
What?
Yeah, I know.
Oh man, this whole time.
The whole time.
The whole time.
And so, yeah, that's just an interesting, approach. And I've done the same, like, for a while, for, 6 months, I was doing these little passion profiles where I would give myself 30 minutes to go into a location that I'd never been in, shoot a subject doing something we haven't planned. And so in order to meet these constraints, I would go in and I would just shoot at 60 frames. And so in post, I had all the options of stretching a moment out, or not. And sometimes, I'd just play it back and it would just be choppier. And that just gave me a lot more opportunities in post, and to maximize my time on set. If I was putting this, constraint on myself of, half an hour, then I didn't want to take any risks by shortchanging myself in post. And so, yeah, I like that as an approach. I wonder, what that process felt like, on the day of, here's what we're doing. Let's I can't imagine how many setups. Like,
oh man,
right?
Just
right.
How do you shoot this? Yeah, I can't imagine either.
But beautiful. Like, it's a gorgeous film. Yeah. And so, yeah, just mixed. That's my overall thing is like, you know what? There's some really great moments. And there's some moments that I kind of lean away until they bring me back. And so it's just that constant process for me of leaning forward and being like, okay, we're doing this again. Cool. I'll wait for you.
Yeah. You kind of have to.
You kind of have to. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there are other foreign films I would rather watch, I would say,
Mm.
than this, but this does have this element of like heroic, yes, kind of moments that not all foreign films do I get from those. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Can you imagine 12 Years a Slave with this tone? Right?
No,
I mean, that's
yeah,
effectively what we're talking about.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
it's
Wow.
the worst moment of this country's history, I presume. Like I haven't done a full history lesson in India. I'm passingly familiar. Like I have looked up India's history before, and just out of my own curiosity, reading this and that. And their worst era is much closer to modern times than a lot of other countries. And so, like India's really rough time, is not that far in the past, and just having this tone, this playfulness with this topic is really fascinating to me. Just as an approach to cinema and your own history, I guess, to some degree. And again, this is mostly fictitious, but these are real people. I can't imagine making a movie about MLK and Martin Luther and Malcolm X and having them do like a buddy cop movie. Like it would just be like, what is going on?
Oh my God.
Right?
Yeah.
And to me, that's kind of what this is. It's like, let's take these really important historical figures, revolutionaries, and let's make Che Guevara, sing and dance. Like, whoa, okay, that's a choice. Like, let's experience that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know. Fascinating to me, one way or another. I don't really care. Like, it's not my history. You can do what you like, and it's very, very fascinating. Yeah,
Yeah. So
and beautiful.
it was enjoyable. I really liked it. Again, I don't think I'm good.
Yeah.
I don't really need to watch it again. But I think that it was a lot of fun.
Worth watching
for me.
for sure. Yeah.
Worth watching for sure. Yes. And I do love when countries who are, we don't pay attention to a lot as Americans put out a piece of art that blows up all over the world and it gets attention, whether that's Korea or India or China or Japan or whatever, Germany. You put out content and the whole, like a film, and the whole world stops for a second and pays attention to you. And I think that's the power of movies, specifically.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily any other art form. I mean, think about it, like a piece of art, like sculpture, it's not going to stop the world. Nothing stops the world, but you know what I'm saying? It's not going to get the attention that like a film would, same with music and a painting or something. But, movies, there's something about them that will just get everybody's eyes looking at you for, even if it's just a second,
What's interesting too is in the early history of Hollywood and films, like it was much more common to see international films actually, because there was no language barrier. It was all visual storytelling. And it was only after, talkies, when we started doing sound sync, that everything began to be more parsed and more internalized and localized, because in those early days it was pretty common to see Japanese films and French films, and then you go through this period where, well, I can't understand what people are saying, and you just start to segregate culturally our sharing, until recent times, and now it's being more and more common to watch a foreign film. Like most people in America have watched Squid Game. That's crazy. And that's really, really cool. I wish people would watch it with the subtitles, but I guess you can't win it all. That's the other fascinating, I swear my last comment, is RRR. There was no way to really watch this properly on Netflix anyway. And I couldn't find a good way to watch it properly at all without subscribing to a whole new service, because it's the native language is in, I'm going to butcher this, but Telugu, or Telugu, but
something like that,
something along those lines. And that was exclusively licensed through another streamer. that I don't have access to. And so Netflix could only license dubs. There was no way to watch this with your native language and read the subtitles the whole way through. You had to watch it dubbed over, at least right now. Maybe in the future, they'll finally get those rights. But for now, you could only watch it the one way, and that was dubbed. And so I had that same experience as you did. It was like, which one should I be watching? And there was no right one. It was just kind of, whatever felt right to you. And so, yeah.
That's why. Okay, that's interesting because the same thing. It's been that way for a couple of films actually that we've watched. That I've tried to like switch because I can't watch it English dubbed. It just drives me nuts. Like it's so bad that I have to watch it in some other language to read because then I get distracted and whatever. But that's not the only foreign film where the dubbing has not been right either, and it drives me crazy. So that's interesting. I didn't know that.
Nice. So what are you going to recommend this week?
So I don't have anything like super strong to recommend, but something like a show that just came out on Apple TV that I'm starting to kind of get into, and I'm like, okay, I don't know exactly where this is going, is Silo. I figured you figured I would probably like talk about that just because it's end of the world, like apocalyptic kind of like feel, and you think it might be, and people live in a silo and they've lived there for 100+ years, and just trying to keep. It's a story of the government or whatever leaders trying to keep everybody there. It's interesting, and it's an interesting world that they're trying to build, and so I'm kind of going down that rabbit hole of it. I've only gotten a couple episodes in, but it's interesting. So yeah, I'm going to recommend Silo on Apple TV.
Nice. I'll co-sign that. I'm going to recommend. So if you like heightened cinema, then I got the pick for you.
Okay.
First off, I'll put in the show notes just in case you really like RRR and want another Indian film that you think speaks on this level. Bahubali, I'm butchering that 100%, but I'll link it in the show notes, and I think you'll appreciate that. But I'm going different, language here, and I'm going to recommend this Spanish-French film called The Last Circus. This is a doozy. It's wild, especially considering where it begins, because it starts very simply and it just kind of keeps escalating and escalating and escalating until you're like, wait, what are we doing now? Like if you thought shoulder fighting was like the pinnacle of, okay, y'all have jumped a shark. My God, The Last Circus has something for you. And the basic overview story is this takes place in like the mid 1930s. And it's it's a revenge tale, a feud between two clowns. And
oh my God.
Yeah. So I'll just let you go from there because it's amazing. It's one that you could, I don't even know, man. Go hit play. And if you're not entertained, then
are you not entertained?
Then I don't know what to tell you. Stay tuned next week. We have a listener request. We had a new review drop in. Big shout out to, I'm gonna butcher this, but I think it's a really funny one. Holy Fear 84 who dropped us a review. Appreciate you, ma'am, sir. No idea. But Holy Fear, you give me Holy Fears, and appreciate you dropping a review. They said that the overview is, greetings, gents. Found your podcast because of your review of Annihilation. I found many of my own ideas being echoed in your review. Helpful to know I'm not crazy, or at least not crazy alone. And so they wanted to ask if we would do a review of The Secret of Kells. And so this has been on my list for a while to cover. And so this will be fun. If you haven't seen Secret of Kells, I'm sure it's got to be streaming somewhere. It's a Irish animation, and one of the more beautiful animations that have come out ever. And so a lot of reasons to watch that film. It's cultural touchstone in a similar way of RRR, but in a completely different styling. And so I'm excited to see what we have to say about The Secret of Kells, Todd.
I am as well. It's going to be fun.
It is. If you're enjoying the show, don't forget, drop us a review like Holy Fear 84. Is that the 84th Holy Fear?
There's a lot of Holy Fears.
And leave us a note if there's something you would like us to talk about, kind of things you find interesting. Feel free to do that. And if you want to drop a note on this episode and give me a backhand of why I missed the true brilliance of this movie, you can do that at thepestlepodcast.com/RRR.
And our quote of the day is from Noam Chomsky. This is a really good one. And the impetus for a lot of films that we really like.
Yeah, it's true.
There are very few people who are going to look into the mirror and say, that person I see is a savage monster. Instead, they make up some construction that justifies what they do. Of course, you don't ever do something thinking I'm going to be the bad guy, or at least most of us, yeah. And hence the impetus of a villain and a quote unquote hero. And we always, who here identifies with Thanos? I mean, come on. And yet we've said multiple times on this this podcast that like Thanos is a great example of a quote unquote villain, of a great villain with a goal and a purpose to sustain life throughout the universe. You know what I mean? So this is a brilliant, brilliant quote. I didn't know that Noam Chomsky said it. So
yeah, it's so good. And obviously, in the history of colonialism, no one ever thought that, we're doing evil on other people. I don't know what they're, other than like some kind of racism, worldview. I don't know what other things. I'm sure they thought they were bringing culture to these countries, and we're elevating them from savages, or some wild misunderstanding of the world. Just ethnocentric view of other cultures is so destructive. And I appreciate this film because they're hilariously evil, but it's not exactly not rooted in something. Like, it's coming from a real place, and that is easy to respect. And so I appreciated that they were able to tell this kind of story with entertainment while touching on very real, issues. Like, that's a really interesting touch, and one that I have a lot of respect for sure.
Yeah. That's a great. I mentioned, like TV stuff, but like put it in the context of real world, like that. I think also it's important to note that, and obviously this goes without saying, it doesn't justify the monstrous acts, right? Mm-hmm. Like this might be true statement, but it doesn't justify, being a racist murderer, that's still bad no matter what you think. Yeah. Right. How you justify it. And I think we know that more today than back in the 20s or, 100 years ago, or, well, I guess that is 100 years ago. Oh my gosh. You know what I mean?
But it's interesting, because at the end of the day, like, stories are probably playing a good role in helping people understand the world around them.
Yes.
I don't think it's a small coincidence with the proliferation of media that we're seeing a rise in cultural appreciation and just a softer touch in how we handle people that don't look and think like us. Like, I think it goes hand in hand. Yeah. Agreed.
Wonderful. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us. I had a great time talking about RRR.
Same.
And I love having, like this dichotomy kind of opinion and back and forth.
Ditto. I really loved hearing why you loved this, why you engaged with it. And I think it probably speaks to a lot of why this is a big popular cultural phenomenon.
Yeah, touche.
Yeah.
If you like this, please like and subscribe, review us wherever you get your podcasts. It all helps. It really does. If you're watching this on YouTube, please leave a comment, all that good stuff. And if there's a film that you'd like to see us review, please let us know. Obviously, we might do it. Right? Secret of Kells we're doing next week. So please join us for that review next week. Until next time, I'm Todd.
I'm Wes.
Go watch some movies.
Yeah.